greatest threat to your net worth is not the volatility of the market, the incompetence of the government, or the shifting tides of the global economy. The greatest threat is the person staring back at you in the mirror. Most people believe that building wealth is an external game played with numbers, spreadsheets, and ticker symbols. They are wrong. Wealth is an internal game of biological management. It is about how you govern your dopamine, how you regulate your ego, and how you manage the primitive part of your brain that still think a luxury car is a sign of tribal dominance. If you cannot master your own psychology, you will eventually find a way to burn your capital to the ground. It doesn't matter if you make $10,000 a month or 10 million. Without a psychological moat, your wealth is just temporary loan from the universe. Think about the boxer Mike Tyson. At the height of his career, he had $300 million. By the time he was done, he was $20 million in the hole. That was not a failure of math, it was a failure of the nervous system. He allowed his appetite to exceed his architecture. For the high performer, the first mistake is neglecting the biological machine. You see people trade their health for capital, thinking they can buy it back later. They spend on neurotoxins, cigarettes, or chemical escapes to numb the pressure of the climb. But wealth is a game of endurance. Every dollar you spend on a vice that degrades your cognitive clarity is a double loss. You lose the principle, and you lose the mental edge required to defend your empire. A focused mind is your most valuable asset. If you degrade the hardware, the software will eventually crash. Stop for a second. Look at your current expenses. Are you buying tools for your growth, or are you buying distraction for your exhaustion? High performance requires you to be a guardian of your own energy. The next mistake is the common trap for the nouveau rich: status signaling. In psychology, we call this the conspicuous consumption loop. You start making real money and suddenly you feel the need to prove it. You move into the zip code you can barely afford. You fly first class when your business is still scaling. You buy the Patek Philippe to show the room that you arrive. But here is the analytical truth. The moment you buy something to impress someone else, you have handed them the keys to your happiness. You are living paycheck to paycheck on a 6-figure or 7-figure salary because your ego is driving the car. True wealth is the ability to walk into a room of millionaires wearing a $10 t-shirt and feeling zero need to explain yourself. When you spend more than you make to maintain an image, you are an owner. You are a high-level tenant of your own life. This brings us to the sophistication trap in investing. Many high-performing executives and entrepreneurs think they are too smart for simple index funds. They want the off-market deal, the exclusive crypto play, or the sophisticated hedge fund. They ignore the data and follow tips from friends. They forget that complexity is often a mask of risk. Consider the case of Eike Batista. At one point, he was the 7th richest man in the world, worth over $30 billion. He promised to become the world's richest person. He built a massive empire in oil and mining based on aggressive projections and psychological hubris. But he over-leveraged. He bowed into his own myth. When the markets turned, his $30 billion evaporated almost overnight. He didn't just lose his money. He lost his status, his reputation, and his freedom. Batista's mistake was a psychological one. He mistook a bull market for his own genius. He failed to diversify his ego away from his net worth. You are not your bank account. If your self-worth is tied to your net worth, you will make emotional decisions when the market dips. You will panic sell at the bottom and greed buy at the top. The next mistake is the pursuit of the get-rich-quick dopamine hit. Your brain is wired to seek the path of least resistance. It wants the overnight success. But wealth that comes fast usually leaves fast because the person didn't grow the character required to keep it. Ponzi schemes and pyramid structures work because they exploit the human desire to skip the boring middle of wealth building. If an opportunity promises high returns with zero risk, you aren't the investor, you are the product. Real wealth is the result of compounding, and compounding is a test of patience. It is a psychological war against the urge to do something exciting with your capital. Then there is the issue of the psychological moat, the emergency fund. Most people view a cash reserve as dead money. They think it should be working in the market, but an emergency fund isn't an investment. It's an insurance policy for your sanity. When you have 12 months of living expenses sitting in cash, you move differently. You negotiate from a position of power. You don't take the bad client because you are desperate. You don't settle for the mediocre job. Poverty is a state of mind where you are always one mistake away from ruin. Wealth is the psychological peace that comes from knowing you can survive a year of zeros. If you don't have this, you are effectively a slave to your current circumstances. The other mistake is the single point of failure. In engineering, if one part of a bridge breaks and the whole bridge collapses, that's a bad design. Yet, most high earners rely on a single source of income. If that salary stops or that one business vertical dies, their lifestyle vanishes. You must view yourself as a diversified holding company. You need multiple branches of income: dividends, rentals, side ventures, or royalties. Relying on one income stream is a form of arrogance. It assumes the world will stay the same forever. It won't. If your main income disappeared tomorrow, how many months could you maintain your current standard of living? If the answer is less than 6, you aren't wealthy. You are just a high-income pauper. We must also discuss the dopamine of credit. Credit cards are a psychological trick. When you pay with cash, the pain centers in your brain actually light up. You feel the loss of the physical money. When you swipe a piece of plastic, that pain signal is muted. You get the reward of the purchase without the immediate sensation of the cost. This leads to impulse buying and the slow erosion of your capital. High performers use credit as a tool for leverage, not as a lifestyle enhancer. If you are carrying a balance on a consumer credit card, you are paying a stupidity tax to a bank. You are literally selling your future labor to pay for things you've already used. Now, let's look at the aggression bias. This is where we see the downfall of titans like Aubrey McClendon, the former CEO of Chesapeake Energy. McClendon was a visionary who helped to spark the fracking revolution. He was a billionaire on paper, but he had a psychological inability to stop gambling. He used his company shares as collateral to take out massive personal loans to buy even more shares. He was all in on a single asset class. When natural gas prices plummeted, he faced massive margin calls. He was forced to sell his holdings at the worst possible time. He went from being a king of the industry to a man struggling with debt and legal battles. His mistake was not a lack of industry knowledge. It was a lack of a stop loss on his own ambition. He couldn't distinguish between being bold and being reckless. For the high performer, the risk isn't being too afraid, it's being too certain. The next mistake is the confusion between saving and investing. Saving is a defensive maneuver. It protects what you have. But in an era of currency devaluation, saving is just a slow way to lose. Investing is an offensive maneuver. You move your capital into assets that produce value while you sleep. If you are scared to take calculated risk, you are choosing the guaranteed risk of inflation. The goal is not to have a pile of cash. The goal is to have a portfolio of productive assets. Finally, we come to the mistake of structural simplicity. Having only one bank account. Psychologically, if all your money is in one bucket, you will spend it according to your highest balance. You see $50,000 in the account and you feel rich, so you buy the vacation. You forget that $30,000 of that is a market for taxes and $10,000 is for the mortgage. You must compartmentalize. You need a system of accounts, one for operations, one for taxes, one for emergencies, and one for play. By physically separating the money, you create cognitive friction that prevents you from spending your future on your presence. Wealth is not a number. It is a psychological state of being where you are in total control of your impulses. Most people spend their lives reacting to their environment. They see an ad, they buy. They see a friend's new car, they feel envy. They see a market dip, they feel fear. To reach the Echelon, you must become a non-reactive observer of your own desires. You must build a system that protects you from your own biology. The rules of money are simple. The execution is what's hard because the execution requires you to kill the parts of yourself that crave validation from strangers. If you want to master the mechanics of the high-performance mind, start by auditing your behavior. Are you building an empire, or are you just decorating a cage? The choice is made with every dollar that leaves your hand.